So in this video, we're going to talk about the logical appeal, otherwise known as logos. And just as a reminder, logos is an appeal that uses logic, sound reasoning, right, to communicate one's position. Oftentimes this includes facts and statistics and does not include logical fallacies. And we'll get into logical fallacies in a later video. So examples of logos would be statistics, facts, but also fully explained reasoning, right? Because sound reasoning means that the use of sound reasoning means that you're not leaving the viewer/reader to do guesswork about how your ideas connect. So we're going to take a look at a video. And I'm going to temporarily pause it here just so we can look at the quote that's being given, because there are times when logos and ethos, or logos, ethos, and pathos, all of the appeals will be used in one particular passage or quote, right? And here we have a statement from the U.S. Surgeon General's Spotlight on Opioids, right? Opioid overdose deaths were 5 times higher in 2016 than in 1999. The majority of those deaths were unintentional. So here you have a statistic, but it's also being given by the U.S. Surgeon General, which adds a level of credibility to it, right? So we're just going to watch about a minute and a half of this video, and then I'll highlight a couple of things that I feel illustrate the use of logos.
More than 3,000 years ago, a flower began to appear in remedies in ancient Egyptian medical texts. Across the Mediterranean, the ancient Minoans likely found ways to use the same plant for its high. Both ancient civilizations were onto something. Opium, an extract of the poppy in question, can both induce pleasure and reduce pain. Though opium has remained in use ever since, it wasn't until the 19th century that one of its chemical compounds, morphine, was identified and isolated for medical use. Morphine, codeine, and other substances made directly from the poppy are called opiates. In the 20th century, drug companies created a slew of synthetic substances similar to these opiates, including heroin, hydrocodone, oxycodone, and fentanyl. Whether synthetic or derived from opium, these compounds are collectively known as opioids. Synthetic or natural, legal or illicit, opioid drugs are very effective painkillers, but they are also highly addictive. In the 1980s and 90s, pharmaceutical companies began to market opioid painkillers aggressively, actively downplaying their addictive potential to both the medical community and the public. The number of opioid painkillers prescriptions skyrocketed, and so did cases of opioid addiction.
Okay, so in this video, I just want to highlight a couple of things. We've already talked about the quote from the Surgeon General, but what I found interesting was the way in which this TED Talk kind of spells out or gives some foundational information before it builds on a more specific argument, right? So, and that is a use of sound reasoning in the sense that it gives you a bit of the history, right? Talking about ancient Egyptian medical texts and ancient Minoans and their use of the plant, right? And then it goes into the 19th century talking about morphine for medical use. And then from there it branches out and defines opiates and opioids, and then talks about how the marketing of painkillers increase the number of prescriptions and therefore the amount of amount of people that were addicted to it, right? And all the while using transitions to connect ideas so that the reasoning is clear to the viewer. So just as a reminder, these kind of concepts would also appear in writing, right? The use of facts and statistics, the explanation of reasoning, and the offering of proof in the form of evidence to back up the argument. So remember that, in this case, an appeal, well, in all cases, an appeal can be used just by itself, but oftentimes it is in conjunction with the other appeals.